The mahogany-paneled study of Madison Manor echoed with my stepfather William's declaration, "Your mother's inheritance will be going to Marcus. He understands business unlike some people who waste time with, 'What is it you do again, Sarah?'" I smoothed down my understated navy dress, a custom Bottega Veneta piece that cost more than Marcus's flashy Rolex, and maintained my composure. If only they knew that while they planned to divert my inheritance, I had quietly built sterling capital into one of the most powerful investment firms in the country. "I run a small consulting practice, William," I replied softly, watching Marcus preen in his garish designer suit. "Right, helping those little startup companies," Marcus smirked. "Meanwhile, I'm managing Dad's entire corporate portfolio. The Madison Group needs a strong heir, not someone who plays with failed businesses." If he only knew that those failed businesses I consulted for were now tech unicorns worth billions, all partially owned by sterling capital through carefully structured investments. While he bragged about managing his father's outdated companies, I was building an empire that would soon swallow them whole. "Sarah dear," my stepfather continued condescendingly, "your mother would have understood. The Madison Group needs to stay strong. Marcus has the experience, the connections. And the right last name?" I finished quietly, thinking of the documents waiting in my real office, the top floor of Sterling Tower, where I controlled assets worth more than the entire Madison Group. My phone buzzed, a message from my CFO, "First phase complete. We now own 15% of Madison Group through shell companies. Ready for phase 2. "I understand completely," I said, watching them exchange satisfied smiles. They had no idea that while they plotted to steal my inheritance, I was orchestrating their corporate downfall. Marcus sprawled in his leather chair, already spending my money in his mind. "Don't worry, sis. Maybe I'll let you keep consulting for some of our smaller subsidiaries. Once I'm in charge." I thought about the last 2 years, how I'd used my knowledge of their businesses, gained during family dinners and casual conversations, to identify every weakness in the Madison Group. How I'd positioned sterling capital to exploit those weaknesses, one careful investment at a time. "That's generous of you," I replied just as another message lit up my phone. "Madison Group stock down 3% after our strategic share dump. Ready to buy back at lower price." William raised his glass of scotch, my mother's favorite brand, which he'd never appreciated. "To the future of the Madison Group. In capable hands." I raised my water glass, thinking of how that future would look very different from what they imagined. The empire they thought would be Marcus's inheritance was already being dismantled and reassembled under my control, piece by careful piece. "Sarah," William frowned, "at least try to look happy for your brother. This is what's best for the family legacy." Family legacy. The words echoed in my mind as I thought of my mother, who had built half of these companies before William swept in after her death. The companies he now planned to hand to his arrogant son, completely dismissing her daughter's existence. My phone buzzed again, another update from my team. "Legal documents prepared for hostile takeover. Waiting for your signal." I stood, gathering my simple handbag, a handcrafted piece worth more than Marcus's car. "Thank you for being so clear about the inheritance. It helps me plan my future." Finally accepting reality? Marcus called after me. "There's always room in the mail room." If he only knew that while they celebrated their victory, I was preparing for war. A corporate takeover so complete, so devastating, that it would leave them with nothing but the memory of their own arrogance. After all, some inheritances aren't given, they're taken. 3 months after that evening in the study, I sat in my real office at Sterling Tower, watching the first phase of my plan unfold on multiple screens. The Madison Group stock was in free fall, thanks to a series of anonymous reports about their financial irregularities, all meticulously documented during my years of quiet observation. "Miss Sterling," my assistant interrupted, "William Madison is trying to reach you. He's called 6 times this morning." Of course he had. The Madison Group's largest client had just announced they were taking their business elsewhere, to a new consulting firm that happened to be a Sterling Capital subsidiary. "Send him to voicemail," I replied just as my phone lit up with a message from Marcus. "Hey sis, need your consulting expertise. Emergency." I smiled, thinking of how quickly their tone had changed. The little consultant they'd dismissed was suddenly valuable when their empire started crumbling. My CFO entered with the latest reports. We now control 43% of Madison Group shares. Their board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Perfect timing, I replied, opening a folder containing years of evidence. Marcus's embezzlement, William's creative accounting, all the financial secrets they thought were safely hidden. The next morning I walked into the Madison Group's boardroom, not as Sarah Madison, the stepdaughter they disinherited, but as S. Sterling, CEO of Sterling Capital and their largest shareholder. What is she doing here? Marcus demanded as I took a seat at the table. William tried to maintain control. Sarah, this is a private board meeting. Actually, I interrupted smoothly, as CEO of Sterling Capital, which owns 43% of Madison Group shares, I have every right to be here. The silence that followed was deafening. William's face drained of color as recognition dawned. Sterling Capital? He whispered. That's impossible. Is it? I opened my briefcase, removing a stack of documents. Let's discuss some interesting findings about Madison Group's management. Starting with Marcus's personal use of corporate funds. You can't prove anything, Marcus sputtered, but his face had gone pale. Really? I activated the room's screens, displaying detailed records of every transaction, every hidden account, every financial sleight of hand. I've been documenting your misconduct for years. Did you really think I spent all those family dinners just quietly accepting your condescension? William stood up, his hands shaking. This is about your mother's inheritance. No, I cut him off. This is about justice. You tried to steal my birthright? I decided to take everything. The board members were shifting uncomfortably, reviewing the evidence of years of mismanagement and fraud. As majority shareholder, I continued, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove current management. Unless, of course, you'd prefer I share these documents with the SC. Marcus slumped in his chair, his expensive suit suddenly looking as fake as his business acumen. Dad, do something. But William could only watch as his empire slipped through his fingers, taken by the stepdaughter he'd underestimated for years. After all, some lessons in inheritance come with a hefty price tag. The aftermath of the board meeting sent shockwaves through both the business world and the Madison family. Headlines screamed, Sterling Capital takes control of Madison Group, and hostile takeover led by disinherited daughter. My phone was flooded with messages from family members who had suddenly discovered a deep interest in my life. Marcus, please, we can work something out. William, let's discuss this as a family. Various cousins, we always knew you were the smart one. I archived them all, focusing instead on dismantling the Madison Group piece by piece. The companies my mother had built were restructured and strengthened. The ones William and Marcus had mismanaged were either sold or completely overhauled. 1 month later, I sat in what used to be William's office, now redesigned to my taste, with my mother's portrait hanging prominently where William's pretentious self-portrait had once been. Your stepfather and Marcus are here to see you, my assistant announced. They don't have an appointment. I watched on the security feed as they stood in the lobby, their appearances notably diminished. Marcus's flashy Rolex was gone, replaced by an empty wrist. William's bespoke suits had given way to off-the-rack alternatives. Send them up in 30 minutes, I decided. Let them remember what it feels like to wait for someone else's convenience. When they finally entered my office, the power shift was palpable. Sarah, William began, his voice lacking its usual authority, surely we can reach some kind of agreement. Like the agreement you made about my inheritance? I turned my laptop screen to show them the latest financial reports. The Madison Group's value has increased 40% since I took over. Turns out those little consulting skills were worth something after all. I've learned my lesson, Marcus pleaded. I could work under you, learn the business properly. Learn. I laughed softly. Like you were going to let me learn in the mailroom. I pressed a button and the screens around my office lit up with detailed evidence of their mismanagement. Your education would have to start with How Not to Embezzle 101. Over the next hour I laid out their options. Sign comprehensive non-compete agreements and walk away with small severance packages, or face criminal charges for their financial misconduct. You're destroying the family legacy, William protested weakly. No, I corrected him, I'm restoring my mother's legacy. The one you tried to steal. I handed them the severance agreements. You have until tomorrow to sign. After that, the SEC gets a very interesting package of documents. As they left, broken and humbled, I turned to my mother's portrait. The Madison Group isn't just about business, she used to say. It's about building something that lasts. The empire she'd helped create was now stronger than ever, guided by the daughter they tried to push aside. The companies William had nearly ruined were thriving under proper management. The innovations Marcus had dismissed as little consulting projects were revolutionizing entire industries. 6 months later, I received an invitation to a family gathering, not at Madison Manor, which I now owned, but at a modest restaurant where William and Marcus could still afford to dine. They want to discuss reconciliation, my assistant reported. I looked out over the city skyline, at the buildings that now bore the Sterling Capital logo instead of the Madison Group's emblem. Tell them the CEO of Sterling Capital is unfortunately too busy running her empire to attend, I replied. But they're welcome to schedule a meeting with our HR department about entry-level positions. After all, everyone deserves a chance to learn the business from the ground up. The little consultant they'd dismissed had become the business titan they'd always wanted Marcus to be. The inheritance they'd tried to steal had been replaced by something far more valuable, an empire built on skill rather than surname. As for me, I had companies to run and a legacy to build. After all, some empires aren't inherited, they're earned through years of patient planning and perfect execution. The Madison name might still appear on some old letterheads, but the power behind it now belonged to the daughter who'd turned disinheritance into the ultimate corporate takeover. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success so complete that it rewrites the entire family history.